Welcome, everyone, to Wizards and Warp Drives, the podcast where three grown-ass men get deeply nerdy about the things they love. My name is Nacho, and joining me, as per usual, is Fred from How to RPG and the mighty glue stick himself, Mr. AJ Pickett.
Hello.
Hi.
Good morning, and a happy belated birthday to our resident monster lore expert.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy birthday, AJ.
Thank you.
Yeah, and feel free to toke on that weed as much as you like.
AJ is still celebrating, so yeah.
I'm recovering. This is medicinal.
Okay. All right. So, Fred's chosen our film this week, and we are going to dive into the summer blockbuster that basically started the summer blockbuster. Yep. 1975. Jaws.
Yeah.
Yeah, it changed a lot. I picked this movie because I knew it was one of your favorite movies because we talked about this a while back, right? And
Yeah.
I was like, if there's any movie that has more information on its production and what was going on and was more interesting than this movie, it doesn't really exist as far as I'm concerned. There's so much information.
So what's everyone's history with Jaws? Like, when's the first time you watched it?
I didn't watch it at the theatre, I don't think. I think I first watched it on VHS with my dad.
I believe I never saw it on at the theatre because I was like 5. It would be criminal for an adult to take a kid to this movie, and you're 5. It absolutely would.
I think you could though. I think it was PG because it was not considered because it was about a shark. It was wasn't considered a horror.
Yeah.
Like
there is implied nudity in it, but there's no nothing in your face.
Yeah, I think the problem is just the sheer nature of the death scenes and so forth. I think that's the issue. My grandmother wouldn't have taken me to this movie. As far as she's concerned, it would have been an adult movie.
Oh yeah,
and I'm fine with that because when I did finally see it, it wasn't on VHS. I believe it was on the TV. It finally had gone to the TV. So years later.
Yeah,
and
same.
I'm glad because before that, I almost drowned when I was 5 years old, and so did my brother. But after watching this movie, I never wanted to swim again.
Right.
So yeah.
I lived by the beach, like opposite the beach. So this film put me off going to the beach. But
yeah, for a long time. Yeah.
I also watched it on TV, and this film caused me to spill my Milo on my crutch and scored my testicles at a very young age. That scene with the severed head.
Oh God! Every time it still gets me. I don't know what the heck it is. It's that head still gets me every single time. I'm like, I'm preparing, I'm ready, and then it comes out, and I'm like, oh God!
Actually, the scariest part of the movie, the most traumatic part of the movie for me, when I was a kid, was his story about the sailors, being stuck in the ocean and being picked off one by one by the sharks. Cold, dead eyes. Woof. That was some heavy, because I'd been on boats like that with those sort of conversations around those exact same sort of tables, drinking those exact sort of things.
I believe that story got made into a film later on with Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, it did. And if they ever made a sequel to Jaws, which of course they haven't, that would be the movie they should make. Is the Indianapolis story. It is the most harrowing story as you can imagine. And not
if I made a sequel to Jaws, I'd have it like the shark had a personal vendetta against the family, and it would follow them around, and even though they would keep moving.
That's a brilliant idea. Why did they make that movie? I mean, God Lord. I mean, geez. Okay. Anyway, should we talk about Jaws?
Yeah. So don't watch this film with a steaming hot cup of mine.
Yeah. I think I would rather have a film where there was a really deep trench, but there was some sort of a barrier at the bottom of the trench that kept these giant prehistoric sharks down there.
Okay.
And then because man went exploring where they should not have gone, they let some of them out, and they have to contend with them one at a time.
Like like megalodons, like the megalodons.
Yeah, something like the
They
Megalodon.
should have made those sorts of movies, shouldn't they?
That
They
would have
should.
been a good, that would have been a good sequel, I
They
think.
could call it the Meg 1 and the Meg 2.
No, that's a bit on the nose, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think so. It's a megalodon.
Plus, we need a
Meg
bit more
1.
action in it, so we need, like, because what's his name's a bit old, so we need an action star in there, like Jason Statham or something.
Yeah, and even better, it's like don't have one
Or
shark.
no,
One
Carl
megalodon's
Urban.
not good enough.
Carl
Have 3.
Urban. We'll have Carl Urban instead.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Jaws, 1975, directed by Steven Spielberg, who would never have a career after this. Just, don't know what happened to that guy.
Yeah, one hit wonder.
Based on a novel by Peter Benchley, starring Roy Schneider, Robert Shaw, Richard Dreyfuss, Lorraine Gray, and Murray Hamilton. Also featuring a notorious score that we've already heard, thanks to AJ's beautiful humming, by John Williams. A massive shark unleashes chaos on a beach community off Long Island, and it's up to the local sheriff, a marine biologist, and an old seafarer to hunt the beast down.
Wow. Cool. I couldn't have said it any better. It's almost as if that sentence is exactly the same sentence I have.
We both copied and pasted off IMDb.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I like they do make a reference to the Long Island accent because Chief Brody is trying to fit in with the locals, and so he's saying, the yard back in the backyard.
Yeah.
I know we all know this story. I can do the plot in like 2 minutes if you like.
Yeah.
Please do.
All right. So a young woman is killed by an unseen predator while swimming at night off Amity Island. Police Chief Brody suspects a shark attack and tries to close the beaches, but Mayor Vaughan downplays the danger to protect the town's economy. A young boy called Alex Clinter is killed by the shark, leading to a bounty and a chaotic amateur hunt. Local shark hunter Quint offers to kill the shark for $10,000. Marine biologist Matt Hooper examines the evidence and confirms that it's abnormally large shark. Fishermen catch a tiger shark, but Hooper finds no human remains inside, proving that the real shark is still out there. During a night dive, Hooper discovers a giant shark tooth and a sunken boat, but the mayor refuses to close the beaches. It's a big thing. This closing the beaches, like one of the big side stories. On the 4th of July, the shark kills a boater and nearly kills Brody's son, forcing the mayor to hire Quint. Brody, Hooper, and Quint. Is it Hooper or Hopper? Hooper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, head to sea on the Orca, a massive shark appears and Quint harpoons it with a flotation barrel, but it escapes. At night, the trio bond over their scars. Quint accounts surviving a US... what was the name of the boat? I didn't write that down.
Indianapolis?
That's the one. The shark returns, damaging the boat, disabling communication. Quint destroys the radio to prevent outside help. Hooper attempts to inject poison into the shark from a cage, but it attacks, sinking the cage, and Hooper escapes. The shark leaps onto the boat, killing Quint.
We don't know he escapes it. Well, yeah, we think he's fucked.
Killing Quint, Brody shoves a scuba tank into its mouth and shoots it, causing an explosion and kills the shark. Roll credits.
Yep. Yeah. And we get that awesome scene as they're paddling into shore together on their little flotation device and their flippers, chatting about whether they should like the ocean or not.
Yeah. The boat is kind of a character in the story too. Because it puts up with a lot of shit from those guys.
Yeah.
Then eventually they blow it out.
So this story is obviously based off Peter Benchley's bestseller. It was so hot, this book, at the time, back in 1974, that they were desperate to make this. They figured bestseller, story, Peter was up for selling the rights to make a movie, and they were like, okay, now let's make a movie. But the problem is nobody's made a shark movie ever. And as some people may have thought, it's a little bit difficult to train a shark to do what you want in a film setup.
Never work with animals and children, or animals that eat children.
Yeah. Nobody wanted to be the cameraman that was going into the shark tank to fix the camera with the live shark in there. So some animatronic special effects had to be invented.
I think they actually bought the rights to the book before the book was released.
Did they?
Yeah,
Interesting.
175,000 they paid for it.
Okay.
And he hadn't released it yet. Yeah, they were look. It was kind of a hot property after the success of Godfather. Production houses were really like hunting out potential books like that. That suddenly became a thing in the 70s.
You're right. Yeah, it was. It was the studios actually grew a brain.
Had the author written any hot properties before that, or
that was his
first
book.
First book. Holy shit! What else did this guy write?
He only had he went on to write The Deep, I believe. So, I think he only had $500 in his bank. He hadn't actually finished the book. It was based off the second draft he had, so he hadn't even finished it, and it was published in Cosmopolitan magazine as a sort of like a short story.
One night in New Orleans, he went down to the crossroads and met with a demon and signed a pact that his half-done manuscript would get published in Cosmopolitan magazine, and then it got picked up as an option and as a movie before he'd written it as a fucking novel. Is this what you're saying?
Thanks to the success of like Godfather. So the Godfather had an influence because
did he come to a sticky and an untimely end, or is he still alive?
Not sure if he's still alive. Actually, yeah.
Beans.
It was based on a series of. So he was inspired by a series of shark attacks that took place in New Jersey in 1916, and it was just a combination. And also, Quint's character was he was inspired by a real life shark hunter as well. So he kind of combined, different facts. Yeah.
Right. As writers do, they take stuff from real life and they turn it to a story.
One of the contracts was he could do the screenplay, but then Spielberg didn't like his screenplay. I think he only used the back half of it in the end. Because there was a lot of like stuff like the reason why the mayor couldn't shut the beach is because the mayor owed money to the mafia. Hooper had an affair with Roy Schneider's wife in the book, causing sort of like there was a lot of more interpersonal stuff that took focus away from the shark.
Yeah, that would be unnecessary shit.
So Spielberg wasn't interested in any of that stuff. He didn't think it led anything to the story. So he pretty much only kept the back half of Benchley's screenplay. And
apart from the blowing up shark. Which,
that was like last minute. They didn't know what to do there. Yeah, so we'll get into that anyway. Yeah. Sorry, Fred.
So no, that's cool. So my interest in this movie is just in terms of the fact that it's weathered time. It was great in its day. It's still great today, and it is a miracle that we got this movie and that it did so well, and it still really affects people today. So this thing started off with a budget apparently of $3.5 million, or I think a few people say $4 million, with planned between something like 55 to 70 planned days of film shooting. I couldn't nail down the information on that.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I got. Yeah,
it kind of got lost. People have different reports. I think that it's either as low as 55 up as high as 70, but it ballooned out to an estimated $7.5 to $9 million as a budget.
It's still nothing. I mean, you'd expect $30 million for the amount of like animatronics and stuff they had.
Well, that's back in the day. Back in the day, this was considered a $4 million horror movie.
Essentially, this was a B movie. This was. Do you know the difference between an A and I only found this out? Where the term A and B movie comes from?
Enlighten us.
Drive-thrus. So at a drive-through, you'd have your A movie, which is your first movie, which you'd go and do, and then afterwards they would have their B movie, which is like everyone would go to see the A movie, and then a lot of people would leave afterwards, and only a select few would sit around for their B movie. So drive-throughs always, back in the day, used to always show double features. So a film would be divided into two parts. It's either an A1 or a B1, and B1 was usually lent to sort of like action and horror. Yeah, so they thought they were making a B movie when they started out. That's why.
I did not know that. Interesting.
No, never did I. Yeah.
So the movie was shot mostly in a location called Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts from May to October of 1974. And through what can only be described as a miracle, its worldwide profit for this was $477 million.
Mm-hmm.
And it became the first summer blockbuster that had ever been created. And from this day, really, movies has suffered from trying to become just like Jaws. The summer blockbuster would happen a lot more, but we also saw the studios just getting a little bit ahead of themselves. So yeah, a little bit crazy.
Yeah, it kind of invented TV spots, trailers, all that sort of stuff didn't exist prior to Jaws.
Because the marketing for this little small budget movie that was supposed to be in Hollywood, everybody knew about it. It was considered a disaster. The worst disaster in Hollywood was this movie and its production. There was nothing like it. And heck, I think the only thing that rivals it now is Waterworld.
Oh, right.
And that was done on the ocean as well.
That's not as bad as everyone says. I've got a bit of a soft spot for Waterworld.
Yeah, I don't mind it.
Yeah.
But the atoll sunk a couple of times, so it was pretty expensive.
Yeah.
I think that vineyard was chosen because it was shallow. So, yeah, they could get out there and, it didn't require... It wasn't deep water. Yeah.
And probably easy to get permits.
Yeah. So I think the smart thing was not show the shark as much was the real smart. And that was not really by choice.
Yeah, that definitely wasn't by choice.
So, yes, Spielberg was smart. He kind of took inspiration from Hitchcock.
Yeah, Alfred Hitchcock was definitely his inspiration.
And how to build suspense by using like POV cameras for the shark and, focusing on people's faces and stuff like, the bit with the barrels. So you don't have to show the shark. Now he's attached the barrels. You can see the barrels are moving.
Yeah.
I also think that not including like mixing real footage of sharks with the animatronic sharks was a good idea because you don't have that break of
that was
suspension of disbelief.
Pressured by the studio, and one of the things I didn't realize they did to make the shark look bigger in the diving cage scene. They used like a midget.
Yeah, but the midget never got filmed in the cage.
It didn't work.
The midget, once it's seen what even a small great white shark could do, there's no way it wanted to get in the water in that cage with a real great white shark because it had literally just he got in, didn't work, tried it again, and this time the shark shows up and all hell breaks loose, and they use the footage, of course, right? But I'm amazed.
I'm just picturing the dressing room before the shooting, where Richard Dreyfuss is in his diving gear, and there's a midget Richard Dreyfuss next to him in his diving gear, and then they say, "It's okay, we don't need you, smaller Richard Dreyfuss. Richard Dreyfuss, you're small enough," and he's just like,
I don't even know midget's a politically correct term. I apologise. I'm about seeing small people.
I don't know. Sorry.
Mini-me's.
Dwarf.
We don't mean any disrespect.
But I mean,
don't hit us.
Who would have guessed that a movie that insisted on less is more approach because they had no other choice because the shark didn't work. And it helped increase suspension in the suspense and the thrill, and became a defining strength of this film, and was essentially based off the Alfred Hitchcock approach, which is to not show them very much until the very end. And it's funny that this was what made it successful. I mean, the fact is, Steven Spielberg, 27 years old, he's not famous when he made this movie.
In fact, he done Jewel, which I think was a straight to TV, which is a great film. Have you not seen Jewel?
But not a successful film, really.
Straight to TV film, and then something called Sugarland
Express.
I've never seen it. Never.
Now,
heard of it
Sugarland
before.
Express was a good movie, but also a financial disaster. So it's really odd that being 26, 27, he's directing this movie, and it's his first major Hollywood movie. Literally. It says something about an individual who can wind up with in a position like this. It's a strange collection
like
of
Peter Jackson.
situations.
Like he was known for his cult movies, his horror flicks and stuff, and then he lands Lord of the Rings. So that was pretty,
yeah. So the mechanical shark, what's his name?
Bruce.
Bruce.
Yeah, which was I think Finding Nemo plays homage to that. Designed by Joe Alves, Alves, Alves. How do you say that surname?
What part of the design did he design? Did he do the?
He created it. So it was 1.2 ton, 25-foot mechanical shark.
Jeez,
that constantly kept breaking down.
Well, let's get real. It's not one shark; it's many. I think they had 5.
Yeah,
one for the left, one for the right, one for a top-down view, one for they had a different shark for it. They had one that just spins.
That's heavy, man. 1.2 ton.
Yeah,
that's you wouldn't want. Yeah, that's a
wouldn't want it standing on your foot.
No, you wouldn't.
So let's talk a little bit about Stephen and this movie, because let's get real. We've heard, and probably everybody has, that Stephen was super stressed making this movie. He was in fear that he was going to be fired, and this was the end of his career. It hadn't even really started.
Yeah, because he went so over budget. The mechanical shark was nicknamed Bruce after Spielberg's lawyer.
Nice.
What's the lawyer's name?
I don't know. That's
Bruce.
Just Bruce, I guess.
Yeah,
Bruce Renner, I think it was.
Yeah. He thought he was going to get fired because, like you said, he only had 55 days. He didn't, and $3.5 million budget, and he went way over both. So he was scared.
Just writing checks left, right, and center.
Yeah.
Well, I mean he wasn't really dealing with that sort of stuff, but it's interesting too. Like Stephen was stating that when production wrapped, he actually avoided shooting the last scene, which is the shark exploding, because he figured that the last scene, that the whole crew would perform some sort of horrible practical joke on him for just making their lives miserable, as he had to sort of lead this team and get this film done. So he went on a plane.
He's just scared of everything, this guy. No wonder he made such good horror movies.
Yeah, and went home and left somebody else quite capable to shoot the last scene.
Yeah. So that's actually
it's not one for big goodbyes.
He does that apparently still to this day.
Wow.
Wow. He reckons that's a good luck charm now. So he feared the crew were going to prank him on the last day, so he skipped directing the final shark explosion. And that has now become one of his kind of like little director quirks. He lets the final scene to the second director.
Yeah.
Considers it a good luck charm.
Sounds antisocial to me.
I think it's hilarious that one of the greatest directors in history never films the last scene, which sort of suggests to you that is the last scene of a film that important? That can anybody do it? Do you know what I mean?
Well, usually it's a very heartfelt moment where everybody's, expresses their admiration for the rest of the crew, and they say their goodbyes and all that sort of stuff. So maybe he just doesn't like all that sticky schmaltzy shit at the end of it.
Yeah, he has got a lot of separation issues. That's why a lot of his films always feature like divorced dads, and because his parents divorced at a young age, and that's one of the main things with E.T. and and Close Encounters. It's all so maybe he has got some sort of like separation anxiety, doesn't like saying goodbyes.
Man.
Yeah.
This podcast tearing apart Stephen's character.
Come on, mate.
Like the shark tears apart the victims, just spilling his innards.
Yeah,
you can afford some therapy, mate.
Yeah. He's probably fine. He's crying into his $1 million notes.
Yeah. So let's also talk about when this movie was released and was successful, and Steven Spielberg never got nominated for an Oscar for being the director of this film. He never got nominated. He never won it, but he literally never got nominated either. And considering how difficult the production on this was, and what was required, I think Steven got mired by the the black mark of this movie. And so they decided, no, a director who had a terrible run
Budget
with their
overblow.
production should not get nominated.
Right.
But it was considered
like a
by many people within the Hollywood community who are well known as a huge scandal. Like the Academy were not really frowned upon for not really allowing him to be at least nominated.
Who did win that year?
Oh God, I can't remember. It's too long ago.
Yeah, I'll have a look while you're talking.
Yeah. What about the producers, Richard D. Zanuck and David Brown? Now, these producers are kind of legends because they really took a huge risk hiring Spielberg. But they had seen him do what they could only describe as the most amazing job on directing the Sugarland Express. They were convinced that he was the best director they had ever seen, and he was really new to this. And so they were adamant that, if anybody could do a great movie with Jaws, he could. So both producers, even with the disastrous problems that they had to contend with in the background trying to produce this movie, they fought to keep him on board with the production and the delays that increased, and keep the film going. Otherwise, it would have been pulled. But these producers are really responsible for ensuring the film eventually had the money, had Spielberg there, and finally got made. Because it would have been pulled a lot sooner if they were not involved.
So Robert Redford won Best Director that year for a film called Ordinary People. Never even heard of it.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens in Hollywood. It happens sometimes. Yeah. And the producers supported the idea of keeping the shark hidden because they didn't have a working shark anyway. So it wound up being an unintentional stroke of luck. So you need to really thank David and Richard because the legends they are, they knew what they were doing and they were right.
Yeah. This also had a financial impact on beaches for 2 years.
Yeah. Can't be understated, really, that a lot of people got a phobia of the wide open sea, and the fact that when you're out there, you can't see what's beyond 20 feet of water or whatever.
I think there's a bunch of children in that sort of late 70s, early 80s that never learned to swim or went to the beach because of this film.
Yeah, didn't go
even
learn scuba diving or even deep sea fishing or anything like that. It's like no. I don't want to get anywhere near a shark. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
and rightfully so, because you do risk it every time you go for a swim in the sea.
Yeah, I lived in Perth for 8 years, and it's just like crazy how like normal like shark nets. You go swimming, there's shark nets, there's the sirens. Great whites have been spotted all the time because that's the breeding ground there. The Great Indian Ocean. It's just people are so blasé. Oh, that's Australia. Everything in Australia.
Luckily, I think they show up around New Zealand in the winter time. I don't think there's summer there because they come here to hunt seals and stuff.
It's too cold for them.
Yeah, but this is their breeding. It's their breeding season when they're hunting seals. Seals are having their pups or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So they
barely hear you.
When they're when they're coming to New Zealand and migrating around New Zealand, it's usually when they're hunting seals, and that's when they're all meeting together and mating.
Right, having a good time. It's like partying.
Yeah, but they don't know a lot about their behavior and migration. So they're studying them.
Shall we talk a bit about the script? Because the script is a mess, but also a happy accident too. Like the screenplay originally done by Peter Benchley that really wasn't very good and needed to be improved by, I believe it was Carl Gottlieb, who did a lot of the rewrites on the script multiple times during.
I think he was a comedy screenwriter as well.
Yeah, and for TV.
He did the odd couple.
Yeah, the odd couple. Yeah. So he did a lot of improving on the dialogue and the character development. Benchley, who originally wrote the novel, Peter didn't dislike the film's ending, believing the shark wouldn't be killed by an exploding oxygen tank. It was the most ridiculous thing he had ever heard of. But he understood why Steven Spielberg was doing it, to get the audience behind it. He Gottlieb played the reporter in the film. So he actually had a part in the film during the filming. So they gave him a part because he'd spent so much time with everybody, because it wasn't even ready when they started production.
Yeah, he's the reporter that does the local news report about the shark attacks on the beach.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's Peter Benchley.
Yeah.
And also the guy that inspired Quint's character is, I think I can't remember if he's the assistant to the mayor or he's in the film for like a background character somewhere.
Right, yeah. One of the really interesting things is, even though they didn't have a working script when they started production, which is ridiculous, and they were still rewriting constantly during the movie, Spielberg realized that there was a problem, that the characters were not believable enough. So he sat down the actors when they finally have actors, and they didn't even have the actors when they started production. The key actors were not there. So he sat them down and he said, okay, brainstorm. We've got to solve this script problem. And so that means that all your key actors actually had input into the dialogue of their characters and other characters in this movie. I think Spielberg has said that this is one of the most collaborative script writing processes he's ever been part of, and is probably why it is so strong.
Yeah. He did 3 drafts before they brought in other actors, Peter Benchley. So he had 3 attempts. He had 3 attempts at it. But there was stuff in there that Spielberg didn't like. Like, he kept the affair between Alan Brody and Matt Hooper, which, I understand that's unnecessary. But key dialogue moments were actually written by the actors. So the sorry, I can't pronounce that word.
Indianapolis.
Yep. So Robert Shaw did that. And We're Going to Need a Bigger Boat was ad-libbed by Schneider. Yeah.
There's actually a lot of improvising. So they had a decent script, but they included things that were just sort of thought of on them at the time, and then they wind up. So if they were better than what was planned out, they did them and kept them in. So which is amazing. And a lot of those scenes are on land, not on the water, because they had so little time on the water to do it successfully.
Yeah.
What about cinematography? Because we can't forget just how amazing this is shot. It's shot when you used film, and Bill Butler has got to be recognized for his contribution, because it was quite. It's really amazing the way it has been shot. Right,
has one of the most iconic zoom shots ever. That bit when it zooms onto Schneider's face on the beach. Yeah, that's just amazing.
Yeah. I believe that Butler developed an innovative technique to shoot the film at water level, using what was called essentially some sort of water box, a sealed water box, to create the immersive, terrifying perspective, as if the shark was just coming out of the water, and it could, not only could it be used underwater, but you could also use it just on the water line. And this
gave you the sensation that you're sinking, like you're half drowned.
Yeah. Or that the shark had just popped its head out of the water. So it gave that film a more brutal feel. It helped deal with a lot of the unpredictable nature of weather, and it dealt and also solved a lot of problems with the malfunctioning equipment that caused so many delays. That water box was hugely useful.
That POV, that was revolutionary. POV. So they'd never done that before, and that's now gone on to do things. I mean, look at Evil Dead. That whole thing is just POV,
They shot this on freehand because they couldn't put it on tripods, particularly with the water stuff. On land, it's a bit different, but on the water, they weren't in gimbals or anything like that. There wasn't. It wasn't balanced out by special technology because it didn't exist. So, I believe also many of the crew got really badly seasick while they were filming on the ocean, including Butler during the production. So yeah, quite kind of interesting, just how much of an effect that he had on that movie.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about the music and the score by John Williams? Because there's some funny
won
stuff.
won an Academy Award for it. It's funny because it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's two tones.
Yeah.
And Spielberg actually even laughed at it when he first heard it. But
he wasn't laughing when he made Close Encounters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a Twilight Zone, dude.
he learned the power of music pretty hard. Yeah, that it became iconic for the movie.
I mean, Williams had been around for a while, but I would argue this is the movie that catapulted him, because it was this, followed by Star Wars, followed by Superman. So it was just banger after banger.
I would have liked to have heard his reasoning behind, like, when he first thought, make shark music.
It's meant to symbolize a shark's relentless nature.
That's like a march, like a military march. And
it was he incorporated elements of pirate music and classical works. So he was
pirate music.
I guess sea shanties maybe.
Who knows? Who knows?
Because it's kind of sweeping music when it's and then it's going back into it again.
So those two alternating notes were used because they didn't show the shark, because they didn't have a working shark.
It's a cello, isn't it? Is it a cello they use for that?
I don't know. I thought it was just a piano, but maybe I'm wrong. I know he played it originally on a piano, but and it was considered a joke by Spielberg. But I believe the presence of the shark, every time the shark was supposed to be there, but they couldn't show it, and it was a scene in the water or underwater or just on the waterline, they would have those two alternating notes being performed to indicate that the shark was present. And so the music did most of the work to actually indicate the shark is there, which is quite amazing to consider.
It's horns making this.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
It's also my ringtone for work when work calls me.
Right.
Nice.
So I know not to answer.
What about editing on this film? Because look, this movie wouldn't have survived without a brilliant editor, and Vera Fields, who did the editing, won an award for it. Did most of her editing work in a pool house beside her pool for this film, and she played a crucial role in shaping the film's tension and earned the Academy Award for Best Editing. But she really worked closely with Spielberg. I understand that she and Spielberg basically locked themselves in the pool house and just refined all the scenes to increase suspense and help show the presence of the shark when the shark was not actually there, to make it, to sell it, which was hard. In fact, so much so that I believe that Spielberg decided he wanted to add in a new scene, which is the famous, the ship has got a hole in it. Let's jump in the water in the middle of night when the shark is usually operating and nothing can possibly happen, and have a look at the hole that's in the boat and have the head float through and scare the bejesus out of everybody. That scene with the head was shot in Vera's swimming pool with a mock-up of a section, not the entire boat, but just a section of the boat, a head that had been made, a whole lot of milk that they poured into the swimming pool, and the right lighting, and that's how they got that shot. Just because Spielberg said, I need another scare shot. I want a jump scene, and I think we can get a bit more out of this. And that's what they did.
That is the scariest shot in the film for me.
It is. Yeah.
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 Do you want to talk about the cast?
Oh yes, let's do that. Yeah.
So Spielberg wanted anonymous actors at the time just to be more focused on the story and the shark. But they all were quite famous. Roy Schneider, I think he was in The French Connection prior to this. And he actually approached Spielberg at a party when he heard him over talking, saying he wanted to do it. Robert Shaw, he was basically pushed by the producers due to his work in The Sting. and he was really method. And Richard Dreyfuss was cast. George Lucas basically suggested Richard Dreyfuss to Spielberg, and Dreyfuss and Shaw didn't get on at all. Like, they argued a lot because Shaw had a bit of a drinking problem to a point where Dreyfuss actually threw all his alcohol over the boat one day.
That's right. Yeah, he did.
It was causing like slowing
Yes, he
down
did.
the production and stuff like that because he was hungover or he was pissed, and
yeah,
he was just getting pissed
he was,
off of
he
him.
was getting a little bit Marlon Brando, and Dreyfuss was having none of it. He did not like that
I think it's funny
professionalism.
that Richard Dreyfuss had a bit of an ego on him. You know, he had a bit of an ego on him. He was quite young, and he
small,
admits
very hairy man.
I mean, he really should be called Richard.
You seen There's Something About Bob? Is that what it's called? That one with him and Bill Murray?
Yeah.
I love that film.
So I believe Robert Shaw, who was a classically trained and quite famous stage actor, was not impressed by Richard and his talk about how he should have been, being wined and dined in New York, and why the heck was he here on this ocean filming this movie? Because he'd done The Apprentice of Duddy Kravitz, which turned out to be a very poor movie. It did not do well, and he was terrified it would end his career. But that started it all, is the fact that Richard had a bit of an ego, and Robert didn't like it and felt he needed to have be taken down a peg. He did not mess with anybody else, but he did mess with Richard. Let's talk about Roy Schneider. I think it's really interesting how Roy Schneider essentially gets a role because he bumps into him, and he's in a Hollywood party, and Spielberg just vomits out his guts about how much trouble he's having filming this movie called Jaws in a party. And he can't find an actor to play Chief Martin Brody. Like, nobody wants to do it. He's approached so many different people, and nobody wants the part. And he doesn't know what to do. And then Roy just says, "Well, I'm an actor. I'll play the part." And that's why we wound up getting Roy doing it. And he was the perfect person for it.
That's his iconic role.
Then he ended up doing Sequest after Jaws.
He did, and he was good
and Blue Thunder.
And Blue Thunder.
Yeah.
Follow my leader.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I mean, this is his iconic role. If you go back, this is what he's known for. Jaws. Yeah. Brody.
Yeah. And what was interesting too is Schneider himself. It's not just Chief Martin Brody, but Schneider was terrified of the ocean as well, which sort of added some authenticity to his performance as the reluctant sea town sheriff having to deal with a massive shark.
Who else would have been perfect for this role? James Woods.
Right.
Yeah. He played that perfect big city cop being forced to go to the small town. And I also like the mayor. Who was the mayor? Murray Hamilton. Yeah, he was a great. There is that big whole subplot of we've got to keep the beaches open. Commerce versus
town mayors are like town mayors are like the bosses of all the real estate agents. They're boss monster of real estate agent world. If they were in fact a monster class, you could get experience points for cutting them down where they stood. Because they tend to propagate when the economies are getting inflated.
I think you're right onto something here. Let's talk about Murray. Let's talk about Murray Hamilton, right? Because he's the person you love to hate.
Yeah.
Right? This is the person, when we were watching the movie, they were like, if anybody needs to be eaten by the shark, it should be the mayor.
He doesn't go in the water.
No, he doesn't ever go in the water. And probably for good reason, because he knows fully well that something is going to eat you if you get in the water. But Mayor Larry...
It's quite happy to tell his kids to go out and swim in it, though.
Yeah. He's
get out there. Get out and swim.
He's a dick. He's a real dick. So Mayor Larry Vaughan It's funny because when they made more Jaws movies, they kept that character, and he hasn't changed. He's still a stubborn mare who refuses to accept that there is a shark out there, will not close the beaches because it would affect the Amity,
You'll
island
cause a
economy.
panic. Yeah. You'll cause
commerce,
yeah.
Yeah,
commerce versus consumption.
If you look very, very carefully at the footage when we first see that character and the car drives onto the ferry, that Snyder's character Brody's standing on, going to try and stop the scouts from swimming and probably getting eaten by a shark. You'll notice that on the side of the car are the words Vaughan Real Estate. He actually owns a whole lot of real estate on the island. That is how he makes his money. And so this is why he did not want the beaches shut down.
This is what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So I think I mentioned it, but in the original Bentley novel, he owed money to the mafia. Mafia that were pressuring him to keep the beach open. But that's something that got Spielberg. Basically
we could have got Joe Pesci show up.
Yeah.
Well, funny like a clown, or
we'll have the Chief Brody will be there, with Schneider, and then we'll have Joe Pesci show up, who's coming after the mayor, and then we'll have James Woods, who's the cop who's doing the mafia investigation, who's suddenly in the strange town as well. And they all somehow get roped into being, maybe they get rescued. That's
the sequel we wanted.
Yeah, the ferry gets
the mafia versus the sharks.
Yeah, the ferry's getting attacked by the sharks, and so the chief goes out with the fisherman and the researcher in order to rescue them off the ferry. And it just happens to be Joe Pesci and they're all armed, and they have a shootout and that sinks the ferry, and they all have to escape onto the boat. And then the fucking captain goes crazy, guns it out, cuts the steering mechanism on the boat, so it's just going straight towards the shark. And they have to,
You've really thought about this, haven't you?
No, this.
I just realised those Shark Tale, we do get Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese voicing sharks.
Well,
so maybe this film already exists. We just can get Joe Pesci.
So Murray wasn't fond of the water either. And he did most of his acting on land, as you might have noticed. In fact, I'm pretty sure almost all of it, apart from the ferry scene. Murray was actually a very successful actor who never struggled for work before he did this or after. So it never really affected his career. But he played everything you can imagine except for the leading man. He's never got that role.
Yeah, I can see why.
Because he's not pretty enough.
Yeah, he's a bit rough.
He's a bit rough, yeah. Let's talk about Robert Shaw. We talked a little bit about his rivalry between Richard Doofus on set, and constantly taunting him and so forth. But Quinn the Shark Hunter has got one of the most amazing sort of roles and does such an amazing job with that role. It really built tension, having that real world on-screen chemistry that was reflected in real life helped a lot. I believe that when
he went almost full method on it, didn't he?
Yeah. Including the limerick that he was singing to embarrass Chief Brody's wife when they showed up. That was made up on the spot as well.
Yeah, he did sense that he was just an old salty sea dog that had done everything and seen too much shit. And
he was almost challenging them, calling them buffoons, basically charging them an outrageous fee.
And a really great death scene. Like, what a horrible way to go out.
Oh, absolutely.
Particularly after a story about the Indianapolis.
Although
spoilers, everyone, spoilers. He gets eaten by a shark.
He does, yeah. He was actually a pretty well-known and pretty good stage actor, but he was also a highly experienced writer. And when he was given the USS Indianapolis monologue it was too long. It was like 3-4 pages long. And so he rewrote it, as you mentioned, and he said it needed more depth, but really what he did was not add more depth, is he trimmed it down and just kept the essential aspects that were most important to communicate to the audience.
Yeah. It's
And
one of those scenes that feels like it should be taught in a class for acting.
Yeah.
You know, it should be studied.
Yeah.
It's just a really great performance and deliverance, and because he's just telling a story, but you're so captivated in a world where in a film where you've got a giant shark and all this stuff. It's one of the most like, oh,
yeah,
was that
horrible.
bit where they were comparing their scars, and then Richard Dreyfuss saying, you know, she broke my heart? Was that all ad-libbed? I'm pretty sure the comments about Dreyfuss's body hair was ad-libbed.
I don't know.
Accurate.
No idea.
Yeah.
So I believe Shaw felt it was so important to for this scene, that particular Indianapolis monologue, that he said, look, I think it would add more to the scene if I drank a little bit of alcohol. So he asked Stephen if he said, would it be all right? The problem is he didn't stop. And so when he had to deliver it the first time, this unforgettable scene, he was completely smashed and he could not do it. And they had to carry him onto the boat to try and do the scene. And then they realized he was not able to actually act at all. In fact, he was not able to do anything. And so the next day he apologized. He was sober and he delivered an unforgettable scene. He did it perfectly the first time, apparently. Let's say the second time, because the first time he was drunk as a skunk. And they were amazed at just how well he could do that. So he obviously saw the error in his ways. And sorry.
That tension between him and Dreyfuss, though, adds authenticity, to their characters, I think, as well.
Yeah.
So and this happened, I suppose happens to a lot of actors, particularly back in that day, but they probably still happen to it now. Due to tax issues in the USA, Shaw had to leave the set immediately after filming Wrapped to avoid financial penalties. So he did. So, yeah. That was his ride in that movie.
Yeah, you're only allowed something like 100, I don't know what it was, 143 days outside of the country or something. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. Or an accountant in either way.
What about Richard Dreyfuss, or Doofus, who played Matt Hooper? And Mr. Doofus actually initially turned down the role of Hooper multiple times. In fact, he thought when Spielberg came to him and asked him, he said no. He said he liked the idea of the movie and he would watch it, but there's no way he would play it, because he said it would be a hell to shoot. I don't want to be part of that. And he was pretty adamant that he didn't want to. He said he was lazy. He just did not want to go through the hell that would have been the shooting of this. It was only because of the apprenticeship of Dudley Kravitz that he was so fearful that his career was over that he actually took the role. And he had to beg Spielberg at this point, because he'd turned him down multiple times. Spielberg was like, dude, I offered it to you multiple times and you told me no, 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 no. He even got Spielberg in front of the producers to try to convince Spielberg to refuse to do the movie as well and turn them down.
Son of a bitch!
They must have liked each other, because they worked together again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, after this.
So, Richard was really a big pain in the ass, but also immensely humorous because of the things that happened after and during filming. So he often clashed with Robert Shaw, yes, but and the guy was merciless and supposed to be quite nice, but he also respected Robert Shaw, believe it or not. Richard actually, he knew who he was. He knew what he was capable of. But this idiot, as the doing the movie during marketing, told everybody that it was a disaster and it would not make any money, and it was going to be a terrible movie. That's the sort of thing that he would say. It's like, this movie's a disaster. You're not going to like it.
Well, he was wrong.
He was definitely wrong about a lot of things. And the most memorable moment in the movie when Hooper's in the shark cage with the spear, the real footage that was used from the great white shark, that scene was actually supposed to play out differently. Hooper was supposed to die in the shark cage, but it was because of the real footage they had of the shark that they wanted to keep. They decided to let his character escape, swim down to the bottom of the ocean, and live. Otherwise, he was dead meat too. So, yeah.
Would you do that? Would you go down in a cage?
Not a chance.
I've been offered before, and nah, I wouldn't do it. Would you do it, AJ?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
I have
Because
another.
of this film?
No, I've done the VR goggle experience with the shark, with the open cage
Oh,
thing.
yeah. That's great.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do that again.
I almost killed my mum on that.
Right,
we got that for so I don't know if you've heard of this. When PlayStation released their first VR, you got a free game, and it was a demo, and it's basically you go down in a shark cage. And
it's a great demo. It's got like multiple different environments that you can explore.
It's really pretty. So at first you're kind of just admiring all the coral and the lovely coloured fish and whatnot, and then you see something like in the corner of your eye swim past, and then you realise it's a shark. And then the shark bites the cage and rips the front of the cage off. So then you feel like you're just fully exposed. The best thing about this demo is like just having people and just watching their reactions. But we got it for Christmas, and I put it. My mum's in her 80s. We put my mum on it, and she almost died because she was like screaming. Anyway,
you cruel person. So Richard has one other fact, which I think it redeems him, since if you consider what he was like behind the screen, being the doofus that he was. Is Richard discovered that there were a lot of women who flocked to this movie being filmed because it was being filmed for so long, and in a location which is also kind of considered like a touristy summer location. A lot of women, you might say groupies, flocked to this, who were fans of the production, fans of the location. So he discovered that because he was a star in this movie and people knew his face, from movies, he could have a lot of sex, and he did. He did. So a short, runty, not particularly pretty individual can get a lot of sex as long as they're in a movie, and he partaked in a lot of it.
Speaking of women, you know that scene where the lady gets taken by the shark, and you see her. So apparently Spielberg tied cables to the bottom of her feet. So she was like literally just being yanked back and forth, and a lot of those like reactions were actual because people were scared of the shark and they were scared of the methods he was using. So those emotions when you see people getting eaten or attacked or whatever, and they look genuinely scared, it's because they were like shitting their pants.
Yeah, well, so you're talking about Susan Backlinie, who played Chrissy Watkins, right? The first shark victim.
I'd never learnt their names.
Right.
Her name is Robert Paulson. Yes, we know him.
Yeah. So
shark victim number one.
Yeah.
So Backlinie, or Susan Backlinie, was actually a professional stunt woman and a swimmer. Quite accomplished swimmer as well. Not really an actor. And she was really the perfect choice for this. She didn't really have any acting, but all she really needed to do was, say a few lines and get in the water. And they needed somebody who looked pretty. And she provided a photo of herself naked to them because when she went for the audition, she figured, well, I can do the front part of it and I can do the back end of it, which as the stunt woman. But I don't want to, because she said they make you get undressed when they want to check you. If they're looking for a nude role. So she said, I don't want to do that. So I just provided the photo, which meant that when they were going through her
Weinstein type behavior.
Yeah.
Weinstein.
Yeah, it's a little bit, and it's a bit of a problem there. But she provided the photo. Person looking at the photo took it up to Spielberg, showed it to him, and said, "Look, I found the person, stunt woman. She looks like this. she can swim. And then Spielberg said, "Yeah, but can she act?" And the guy said, "Come on, give me a break. It's a hard combination to get everything. Come on."
That's great. Why are these photos all stuck together?
I think we should definitely bring her in.
Yeah.
I think we should definitely bring it in here.
Yeah. Yeah. So she, I believe a couple of things with that role was she was not warned exactly when they would pull, like 10 people on one side, 10 people on the other.
Yeah.
So when she's screaming, it's very real pain because her body has been subjected to a lot of force. And so apparently the scenes they kept are the ones where she was in the most pain.
Yeah.
And did the most screaming and seemed the most real. And when she gets pulled down, that is Spielberg. He did the last pull down when she is finally taken by the shark.
That's why he was scared to go to this final scene.
Yeah, because all the horrible things he'd done to people.
Yeah.
I believe too that Susan said that the problem with the rig is it was a harness, and had the cables on each side to pull it back and forth. But if she ever got into any trouble, nobody would know because of the way that she had to perform things. So she insisted on a harness system that would allow her to release herself if things got out of hand. And that's what they wound up having to do. Otherwise, she wasn't getting in the water.
Damn straight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spielberg also makes a cameo in this film. Voice only, though. He is the guy on the radio that Quint is speaking to. Yeah. So a lot of sort of like screenwriters and people that were influenced and stuff will all appear in this film. And most of the extras were just the residents that lived in the area.
Yeah, locals. Yeah.
Yeah.
I particularly like the bit where he's going down and talking about repairing the fences, kick my fence in. Kids going along here. And
what do you think of Brody's wife? Obviously she would go on to have bigger
Lauren Gray.
Bigger parts as the sequels.
Probably one of the most down to earth characters in the whole movie, really.
So I believe, I got a bit of information about her. Apparently, Lauren Gray, who played Ellen Brody, was selected very specifically. But unfortunately, she was married to Sid Sheinberg, who was the president of Universal Studios, which made which made a lot of people assume she got the role because of favoritism. And Spielberg didn't agree to that. He said he strongly supported her casting after seeing her in a TV movie, I believe it was, and thought that her performance was excellent. Even though the TV movie was not that great, her performance was great. And one of the reasons he said he picked Lauren is, and Lauren was one of the first actors to be hired, is that Spielberg considered her a perfect match with Roy Schneider. He said you could believe that Lauren would be married to Roy Schneider or Martin Brody.
Yeah.
And that is why he said she needed to have the role, and she was a very capable actor. She's also one of the very few actresses on set who never struggled with seasickness at all. Yeah.
Does she go in the water? I can't remember.
No. I think if she was on the water, it was just sort of in between shoots or lost footage or scenes that were deleted or something like that.
Yeah. I know she's more product, in Jaws 2 and Jaws the Revenge.
She walks on a pier at some point when the boys got their little boat.
Yeah. It's hardly, of course.
There was meant to be a romantic subplot between Hooper and her, which was in the book.
That probably would have happened on his fancy boat, right? Come and see my boat. Hang out with me. Here, this is my radar.
It would have been gross and hairy.
So, also, I believe the more interesting roles in the film, or the short-lived roles, should I say, in the film, is Jeffrey Voorhees, who played Alex Kittner, the boy who gets eaten on the raft.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the first young child to be eaten on screen. So Jeffrey could not complete the death scene successfully. They tried it about 4 or 5 times.
Can't even die, bro.
Doesn't look realistic enough.
Yeah, because his hand.
He's not thrashing around enough because he can't breathe.
Yeah. So in the end, they decided that they couldn't rely on him to pull off the scene without a bit of help. So they put a diver underneath him to pull him down in the final section when he has to be taken.
Really shake the shit out of him.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. The diver's pushing him up and down a couple of times, pulls him down.
They had to change his death scene because the day they were filming that is one of the days the shark broke down.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So they had to because it was meant to be more graphic.
Yeah. The clauses for cruelty to animals. You can be cruel to children. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Give the parents more money.
That was one of their malfunctioning shark days, as it became known. So they had to improvise his death scene a bit more.
Yeah. Wow. I believe wasn't the head of the shark supposed to come out and literally just chomp onto him and pull him down to make it even more horrific?
Yeah.
In
the end, the floating, the inflatable mat that he was on that goes washing up on the beach with blood around it, that's more poignant. I think that's all they really needed.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. But so they had the rolling shark in the background, which was pretty brutal.
Yeah. I believe the diver also provided oxygen to Jeffrey so that he wouldn't, because he was quite young. You know, it's an awful lot to expect from the guy to get to pull this off. It's a very hard scene to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he, even though he played the ill-fated Alex Kinder, he still actually lives in Martha's Vineyard, believe it or not, where the movie was filmed. And then decades later, he reunited with the actress who played his mother, Lee Fero, in a restaurant. And she recognized him, and he recognized her, and jokingly, Lee slapped him. Just like her character did to Chief Brody in the movie.
Apparently that one where she slaps Chief Brody, that was a real slap, and they did 17 takes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes. It's funny how Lee Fero, who played, Miss Kittner, was actually a professional film actress. She was actually a respected drama teacher in the community, or community theatre performer in Martha's Vineyard itself. So they selected somebody who was local, and she was the one, and she's very skilled. Lee was nervous about hitting Schneider with the slap, but Spielberg encouraged her to go for it and go for realism, which is why Schneider gets slapped 17 times and so hard.
And you can take it. He's a professional. Let's go again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I understand that Roy, at the end of this, after they finally got the last shot and they were satisfied that it was locked down, he joked to Lee, you could have just acted it. But I believe that Roy Schneider understood the rationale for why it was to be as hard as it was. And so Lee, as a result of this, she is one of the few people that is often attending Jaws conventions, and her experience is unlike everybody else. Normally, it is not about telling everybody about what happened in the movie and what you thought. No, she gets asked to slap people a lot. A lot. So yes, that slapping
awesome.
Extended beyond Roy Schneider, and many young men who wished to be slapped by a woman got slapped by her.
Here's a fact I've discovered. Did you know Spielberg really wanted to make a Bond film prior to Jaws? Like, he was sending scripts to Broccoli and stuff, and
I did not know that.
They never went with him. So there's actually a subtle reference when they dissect the tiger shark and they pull out the license plate. The license plate is actually the license plate from James Bond's Live and Let Die film.
Ah.
And that's kind of like just Spielberg put a little nod in there, because he was a little bit upset that he never got to.
I think Spielberg. I don't think he ever did though. He never made a a James Bondish like movie, did he?
He became too big for Bond after that.
He made Indiana Jones and.
Well, he did, yeah. Well, along with George Lucas. I actually think if he just made a spy movie, it would have been brilliant, and he didn't need James Bond to make that work. We've got Ethan Hunt, we've got Jason Bourne. They've all wound up being very successful franchises. Probably not as successful as James Bond, but you can still do it. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be James Bond. It could be Jane Doe.
Yeah.
Mrs. Smith. Anyway, what about I think that's all I know about the actors and the main characters. Do we want to talk about special effects a bit?
Yeah, let's. What do you want to talk about? The shark blowing up the shark.
Well, I mean, you can talk about the blowing up. There's a lot. I took down everything I could find on the special effects since it's such a huge part of the movie. Or not.
You take the lead, mate.
All right. Now they said that I found that the production team said that they had built 3 mechanical sharks, a left and a right and a top view, but there were also other parts of the shark which might be just the fins or some other bit. Like it wasn't like the full part.
The shark that went on to, is it Universal Studios? Is that built for Universal Studios, or was that a leftover?
No, it's not a leftover. I believe the original sharks never survived. The corrosion from the salt water was so great that the bits they just decomposed really quickly after the filming process, as tends to happen if you shuck something in salt water. But they were all designed for a specific shot, and I believe that the shark was made of latex and foam over a steel skeleton, operated by pneumatic and hydraulic controls, and they had to do it this way because Bob Marley had used electronics initially, and the electronics just did not cope. Like water would get in, electronics would just go haywire. The latex would just melt in the salt water. So foam would disappear. It all just got corroded. It all got damaged. So a lot of it just got redone, and they had to constantly fix this thing because of the saltwater corrosion. It was frequently breaking down. It barely worked, and they had never really they tested the shark in a swimming pool, but they never tested it in salt water.
Yeah. It was constant. It was a nightmare by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
That bit where they blew it up, that was just due to the fact that it was broken down. And I think that's why they decided to blow it up, because that wasn't in the original script either. The final explosion wasn't part of the original script and was added later after the mechanical shark malfunctioned. So I just don't think it was becoming reliable enough at the end.
Yeah. I think they used the movable shark fin more than anything else, just for a lot of shots, just because there was no other choice. That was actually used quite a bit. And I believe now in the scene where the shark attacks a character in the estuary, he's in a boat and he's talking to the kids, Brody's son and his friends. That guy who gets eaten, you see the shark come on its side and bite into him. The severed leg that sinks to the bottom was achieved by using a real amputee. They actually got a prosthetic leg, was made to look like the victim's leg to add more realism to the shot. Strange things that we do.
Yeah, there's. Yeah. So I was just having a look, and the Universal ride was close. Guess who killed Jaws?
Who?
Harry Potter.
Oh, wow. I can believe that.
Yeah.
Harry's got magic. And Jaws has just got the mystique of the ocean, and that's just not enough.
Yeah. On
Yeah.
December the 2nd, 2011, Universal Studios announced that they'll be permanently closing the Jaws ride to make room for an exciting new experience, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So, yep, Harry killed Jaws.
Yeah. To be expected. My understanding about the climactic explosion of the shark, that it was actually supposedly done with a miniature shark model and a compressed air tank rigged with an explosive to give that effect. So, and the dramatic sort of water splashing was enhanced with real ocean footage to make the explosion more convincing. But I don't believe I read anywhere that they blew up the original Bruce sharks to do this. I think it was just a model that they had made.
The part where Quint gets eaten is probably the most you see the shark, you think, in the whole film?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so, yeah. When it comes up, when it throws itself up onto the boat, which was kind of ridiculous.
And
I
it's
remember
just
when that
chomping.
happening and thinking, "Oh my God, you've got to be kidding me! It's actually just going to jump on the boat and eat them that way." I'm like, good Lord! But anyway,
yeah. Well, the boat's kind of like sinking at the back anyway.
I believe also too that the famous shot, with you were talking about how Chief Brody on the beach, you get that stretched zoom look on his face.
Dolly zoom, yeah.
The dolly zoom. It is the same technique that was used in Vertigo, 1958.
Yeah.
And they decided this method and technique was the perfect way to do things. This is why Alfred Hitchcock actually influenced the creation of this movie so much. It's amazing.
During lockdown, I went into a real deep Alfred Hitchcock because I hadn't seen, apart from Psycho, and Rear Window. Is it Rear Window? Is that? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Vertigo. They're such good films.
Birds. Oh God, the Birds. Yeah. I believe also the filmmakers used real fish guts, and they made up their own fake blood for the attack. The shark attack scenes to make them more gruesome. And I believe the famous chumming scene where the shark suddenly emerges from the water while Brody's throwing stuff.
Good. Yeah. Such a good scene.
He was not aware that was going to happen.
Yeah. It's such, you just, because that's the first time you get the sense. Well, he gets a sense of the size, and we as the audience get the sense of the size of.
Yeah.
We do actually. It's all kind of just point of view.
We do see the shark before that, but I think sometimes it gets lost because you do see it underwater, and you can see the sort of partly submerged underwater, well, mostly submerged underwater, eating that guy in the estuary. But that scene, the chumming scene, was mechanical effects and carefully timed filming to get the maximum shock value. And Steven Spielberg.
One take, that scene, you reckon?
I don't think it was. I don't think they had many opportunities. I think most of the shark scenes where the shark was working, they didn't work for very long, so they kind of got what they got.
And see that the shark's not working, or Shaw's drunk.
Or there's a storm, or there's boats on the horizon, and they can't film on the water because it doesn't look like
that. The excuse that we need a bigger boat actually made its way into the script from them saying it on the set all the time. That if there was any gremlins or anything that was wrong on set, they would say we need a bigger boat.
Such a great line.
It is a good line.
I believe the garage. There was a supporting boat called the Garage, and that had all sorts of problems because it had all the gear on it they needed to do the filming. One of the orcas sunk during production. It went down, and they attached speedboats to it and tried to drag it into shore before it went completely under. But it was sinking really fast because one of the planks had pulled free when they were hauling the boat around to indicate that the shark was hitting the boat. They actually damaged the boat doing so. And Ron and Valerie Taylor are responsible for the real shark footage that they did over at Dangerous Reef in South Australia. And yeah, that footage was completely accidental.
Yeah, they sound familiar.
Yeah,
they are.
Yeah, that was when the shark attacked the cage. They didn't have anything in it at the time.
No,
they just happened to have the cameras on.
Yeah, just
so
accidental.
I think
got caught in the cables, and that was it. And so they got this footage. They showed it to people, and they had to just decided they had to include it in some way. So they changed the story to accommodate, which is amazing
because it shows the power.
Yeah,
it's not
shark
just
really hated that cage.
Yeah, it's not just an eating machine. It's fucking strong as well. Yeah. So, do we want to briefly touch on the sequels?
I don't want to. I really don't. Please, if you're going to subject me to that, then you need to give me time and warning. I need months of preparation, and I only want to do one at a time so that the trauma is not quite so great. Because you know as well as I do, if we talk about them, all it's going to be is an hour or two of us just dumping on the movie.
Yeah,
I don't mind Jaws 2. I don't remember much about it.
First red flag, 3D.
Yeah, 3D is shocking because they went. Yeah, one of the first 3D films I ever saw. But yeah, Jaws of Revenge, that deserves its own podcast.
It does. And so does number two, because number two is struggling to do something else. So I don't want to talk about them. But let's talk about the problems of Jaws. We've already talked a lot about the problems, right? But I don't think people understand when you think in terms of the issues that Jaws has created. The great white shark in Jaws scared people so much that many, many people stopped swimming for a long time. We said this, right? I stopped swimming after seeing this for a long time, and I liked, even though I'd almost drowned as a kid when I was 5, before I saw this movie. It really affected people, but it also affected people
because you could just when you were kids were assholes back in the 70s. Like you'd go to the beach and there'd always be some kid that would go, dude.
Yeah,
and then suddenly everyone's on fucking edge.
Yeah. But it basically, it really mired the reputation of the shark as being nothing but a killer. And so there was a very concerted effort by a lot of people just to wipe them out. Like you didn't have to worry about sharks eating people. People were eating the sharks because they wound up in the takeaway stores, usually called something like yellowfish, but it was shark, basically, because that was just the code for it. So yes. So don't feel too bad. More humans have eaten sharks than sharks have eaten humans at this present time.
This was originally meant to be a Christmas film as well. Did you know that? It was aimed to be released at Christmas, but due to all the reshoots, it ended up coming out in July, which is summer for America, which I think was smarter. So
yeah.
It's like if you make a horror, then you release it during Halloween. October, November, to capitalize on the Americans' fixation on that particular event, Halloween. I also believe that the studio wanted the Jaws film to be made before a potential actors' strike.
Yes, yeah,
which forced the production into an unreasonable time frame, which meant they had, as we said, no script, no key actors, and no working shark at all. Like this is a production that had too much going on. That was an issue. Like they literally didn't have all the things they needed to get started, and that was just panic stations. So yeah, not a sensible thing to do to start the process and not have key elements for your movie to get it going.
Yeah, it's a miracle that this film got made. And
it is. It's a miracle that it did as well as it did.
Yeah. And it was word of mouth, really, because even the studio didn't have faith in it. I think they only released it on a limited amount of screens, and then it just blew up through word of mouth.
So, there's a funny story around this. They already had figured out that they were going to put it out on twice as many. I think it was going to be like just over 400 screens This is a normal release. But they had already got a hint after screening this that it was going to do well. So they wanted to put it on 800 screens. But some executive in control over at Universal said, no, we're not going to put it on 800 screens. And they said, why? We think there's going to be a lot of people who want to go and see this movie. He said, no, I want to create scarcity. I want them to have to line up along the streets. And that's literally what wound up happening. They had too few screenings of it. Only 400 screenings instead of 800. And people went to go and see this movie and they couldn't get in. They were lining up around the block and then around the next block because literally there's not enough seats for everybody.
See, the evil Hasbro fucking mentality existed back then, mate. Supply and demand.
Yeah, supply and demand. Yeah. So a lot of people went to go and see this movie and never got to see it on the day that they went to go and see it because there weren't enough seats for the damn thing. It's crazy stuff. But they certainly filled up their cinemas that were playing it. That happened.
Yeah. It also found life on TV.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know, once it hit TV, I mean that's when we first saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
it just blew up. Yeah.
Let's talk about the greatness of this movie because that won some awards, correct? It won quite a few. We were talking about it before, actually.
4, I believe.
I believe there's more than that. So which are the 4 that you remember?
4 Academy Awards.
Okay. So the Academy Award for Best Music Score.
Mm-hmm.
And the Academy Award for Best Film Editing. The Academy Award for Best Sound Mixing, I believe, as well.
Yeah.
Which is amazing because the sound crew almost drowned on the boat that they were on because it started sinking. And they decided not to save the sound crew, who I believe the key person was about 75 years old. No, Spielberg said save the actors and they didn't worry about the sound crew.
Except for Dreyfus.
Yeah. You got to save the 75-year-old. He probably will need saving.
He's a marine biologist. He'll be right.
Yeah. I believe it got a Golden Globe Award for Best Original Score, which is not a big thing to say because the Golden Globes are kind of like a shit award in America, wherever.
They're kind of like the tester for the Academy.
I still think they are the shit award. They're not really taken seriously. The way they do things is nutty. It also got.
Also say though, while we're on the note, Jaws 1 isn't the only film that won Best Award. Jaws: The Revenge also won the Razzies Worst Picture, Worst Actor, and Worst Director. So,
yeah,
Jaws: The Revenge is also an award-winning film.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, but it's the wrong type of award. So Jaws also won the People's Choice Award for Favorite Movie, which is not surprising considering so many people went and saw it. And you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody who hates this movie and doesn't think it's quite a good movie. It also got the BAFTA Award for Best Original Score as well, so which is the British award, basically. So if you're not American or you're part of anywhere else in the world, this is the award. I think probably the BAFTA Award is more important internationally than the Academy Award, the Oscars. But in the minds of
one
Americans,
where they all politely clap, when you get it.
I think amongst the Americans, they only view the Oscars as being the prestigious award because it's their award. But BAFTAs kind of covers the rest of the world. And I would say this is one of those times where this is a perfect movie. It's amazing that it is, but I think it is a perfect movie. Would you agree?
I think 50 years on, I think Jaws is a masterclass in filmmaking.
Yeah.
I think it needs to. It's a film that deserves to be studied and pulled apart. Like, if you're going to become a filmmaker, I think this is a masterclass of how you make a film.
It's well cast. It's got very good pacing. It's a primal subject matter. It really hits home, and it's became the textbook for how you handle scary monsters that exist in the real world.
Suspense storytelling, and
for instance, the way the mayor is trying to stave off, panic and stuff is the same way they handle it in one of my other favorite movies, Volcano, with Piers Morgan.
We still have these characters now in the real world. The mayor is Trump. These greedy sort of commerce over people. Money rules the world.
So my understanding is that a lot of people who studied film study Jaws. And like Star Wars, that inspired so many directors and people to get involved in film, Jaws is one of those movies as well that has brought a whole new generation into the field. I still think
it's a B movie though. It is like essentially a B movie. A giant monster eats people on a beach. Yeah, it is what a monster film is. So the fact it's lasted so well is down to its filmmaking.
Well,
the way he's handled the characters
means is,
Godzilla could easily have shown up and
it's an A movie. It's an A movie that was supposed to be a B movie. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's a creature from the Black Lagoon.
Do you know? It's funny. I was watching this and I realized, the shark that we get presented, Bruce, is fed by everybody on the island, and fed by everybody, right? And the shark is a kind of like a metaphor for the vastness of the ocean and the unknownness and the risk that you face when you get into the water or get onto the water. Because let's get real, the shark they present in the story is supernatural. It's incredibly large, but it's not just incredibly large, it just doesn't die.
Well, that's the argument for sharks, isn't it? The ocean isn't ours. You're in their territory.
Yeah.
That's where they live. So we don't belong in the ocean, really.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I still think that the Indianapolis ship sinking scene that Quinn tells is probably the most outstanding scene in the movie at all that we ever had, and it doesn't even include the shark. It just includes the telling of essentially a ghost story. The terrible thing about that story that Quinn tells in the movie too is that around that time when the movie was being released, it was only a little bit little shortly after the information on what happened to the Indianapolis, because it did actually sink. It was the ship that delivered the bomb, and a lot of the crew got lost. And the real story was that's how a lot of them did die. They literally, it was essentially the true story of the Indianapolis. But at the time when they presented it, it was only a guesstimation as to what had happened. It was not actually fact at that point because the government had kept it as top secret information at that point. So it's amazing that scene resonates. I believe it is Steven Spielberg's favorite scene that he's ever done in any movie. Is that scene. I don't know about you, but I don't think Jaws needs to be remade. I think it's perfect the way it is, even with it being as old as it is. And even though the jaw, the shark itself, when you do see it, kind of looks like its jaw as a marionette rather than a real shark jaw. But then again, it's not a real shark. It is a supernatural sea monster, really.
Plus, now we've also had Sharknadoes and we've had the Meg. Yeah. So what's next? We need robot sharks. We need, I don't know, space sharks.
Yeah, we've had Aquaman, who had sharks with laser beams on their noses.
True.
So yeah. And the other interesting thing about this movie too is I think that.
Do you think it's like a slasher film? Like, this is prior to Halloween, which Halloween is considered the original slasher film.
Yeah.
This is almost a slasher, like, you know, this.
Yeah, because the shark is the serial killer.
Yeah, this inspires films like Alien. I think if we don't have Jaws, we wouldn't probably have Alien. We probably maybe not have Halloween. He's, you know, it's more than just about a giant monster eating people. It's a style of filmmaking, of use, you know, how to use suspense.
I think it's more than that. Do you know what I mean? You could view it as being kind of like another slasher movie, but I don't think it is. You know what I mean? Because you've got to understand there's a primal fear in humans for the shark and the ocean. It goes right down to our core.
Yeah.
Right? When we think about the ocean, we think shark. If we're going to be afraid of anything, it's shark. Because that's the thing you most like. You're not going to come across a kraken. You're probably not.
You can in New Zealand. You absolutely can. But we have giant squid coming off.
I know we do. But the reality is that, you know,
I'm more scared of squid than sharks.
God,
yeah, tentacles don't.
Terrifying.
I don't like tentacles.
Terrifying thing.
But the likelihood, right? It's more likely to be a shark. And we you know, even though they didn't report it a lot initially, you know, the reports when there are shark attacks, it's a scary thing, right? It's a much more close to home. So I think it embodies that a lot more. Yeah. I think the problem is you can't make another shark movie that isn't this story, because there really isn't a good shark story to make other than this story. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it is
the ones where the woman is stranded on a rock or something, injured, and she's trying to get to shore, and there's they've made a few of those.
Yeah. But does anybody really remember them? No.
I remember Samuel L. Jackson in Deep Blue Sea.
Yeah, but not in a good way. Yeah.
That's revolutionary.
Those sharks were circus performers on.
Well, they were
on
supernatural,
cocaine.
Souped up.
They were accusing cancer, and that is the first
roided
film.
Up. They were roided up sharks. It's like, what would happen if we gave them a bunch of steroids?
Yeah.
And also, it's
a shitload of steroids.
It's the first horror film where a black person survives.
Well, that helps, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Also, I think it's not just the story of the ocean and the shark that really sort of makes Jaws stand out. I think we can't underestimate the importance of Martin Brody, who really is supposed to represent the average person, who he may be like, you know, a law enforcer, but he's afraid of the sea monster, the shark. Yeah. He's afraid of the ocean. And really, he's doing everything he can to avoid getting on the ocean, dealing with the shark himself. He's trying to get everybody else to deal with it because he's so terrified. It's beyond him.
A normal man would just be like, nah, this job ain't working out, mate.
Yeah.
Man in my notice.
But in the story, you know, Martin Brody's really the reflection of...
Does he have a tragic story? Like, is there a reason why he's transferred here? I can't remember.
I think he didn't. I think it was by choice, because he was sick and tired of being in the city and dealing with all the crime. He wanted a place where there was less crime and less problems to deal with. So he was a
place for his family.
Yeah, he was looking for a place to sort of end his career on a quiet end rather than in the bustle. But Martin Brody has to make a decision.
2 days from retirement.
Yeah, exactly. And then get eaten by a shark. But Martin Brody makes that decision to kill the unstoppable shark that so far nobody has been able to deal with, right? And both experts, Quinn, the shark killer or hunter, and Hooper, the expert on sharks, can't deal with it. Everything that they try doesn't work. It's really up to him. And the only reason he does this is the average person making that decision to face the unstoppable when his family is threatened, because you see his reaction when his son is almost eaten by that shark. And that is really where the story lies, is the fear you have in overcoming the unknown and the unstoppable. And I think we can't forget that's probably one of the aspects to the story that was important.
It's all about family. Fast and Furious.
All
right. Shall we wrap it up?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Any closing thoughts there, AJ?
be careful when you go into the water. Other things live there.
Yeah. Yeah, we need a bigger boat. Definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks everyone. Next week I think we are going to dissect the 2024 Monster Manual, which has come out in 2025. Because
oh god,
makes sense.
Looking forward to it because I can't wait to watch AJ just lose his shit.
We so
start speaking in tongues.
I am actually going to run some monsters out of it on that Friday. This Friday coming up as well. So
yes,
yeah, we'll see. I just thought, oh fuck, I'll use some of these new variants, but yeah, we're going to pull that apart, warts and all.
Yep. I'm still. We've gotten through most of the bits on the Super Atomic. I'm just editing up the superpowers now, which is a laborious process because there's lots of them, hundreds of them in fact. It's mostly just expanding and clarifying some stuff, as Fred will know because he did some play testing. Yeah. We're going to be playing the latest version of it. It's still being edited as we speak. Coming up soon.
Yeah.
I've hit up my Savage Worlds players if they're keen to give it a play test. So yeah, nice. We just got to work out a day to do that. But they're all experienced. They're very experienced RPGers. They're older than one. I think one of my players is in his 70s. So yeah.
And while this is happening, while you're running your monsters from the new Monster Manual, I'll be continuing to remaster not the 2014 Monster Manual, but the 2025 Monster Manual. And it probably will be for many, many months to come. While I have no problem, I suspect, in convincing AJ Pickett to help me make Shadow Dark monsters, because Shadow Dark
you just have that book in your hand the whole time.
Like, I do.
Whenever I see you, you're always holding this book.
It should be like a phone,
like a dark Bible,
fused to the side of my head.
Yeah.
So whenever I talk to Fred, he's clutching Shadow Dark in one hand.
Can't stop touching it.
It's like my new Bible. It's like
Quran. I got confirmation that my physical copy of the Monster Manual is being shipped, so they must still be shipping to NZ.
So. Oh my gosh. Well, the rest of New Zealand will be waiting till April, but I suspect it will be longer.
It's already out of date. They've already released a patch. And I've had to make a shortcut because I'm beyond really bury the lead when it comes to trying to find what their updates are. They don't make it easy, so I managed to find it. So I've kept that as a shortcut, and it's just rewording. They've just reworded some spells. Just doesn't seem anything major. I'll be trying out the new Hobgoblin and Goblin variants that they've chucked in there this Friday. So see if it makes any difference. They're probably still just going to destroy them. So,
yeah. Well, as long as they're not level 1, if the level 1 they might struggle. But anyway, we better get out of here.
Yes, I have a sick family to go check on. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. And that is good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
And it's good night from Dun Dun. Dun 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 Dun. The Jaws.
Fucking idiots. Thanks.